Hare Krishna. Today we will start with 15 minutes on Trinath Api Sunichena, and then we will read the Prabhupada Lila Amrita. So, from yesterday, fleeting pleasure leads to unlimited misery. Those who are devoid of Krishna consciousness have many material desires, therefore, they are running around fulfilling these material desires. So, in the long run, they are put in an ocean of misery and drowned there. Samsa parsa jab hoga, the fleeting pleasure one derives from contact with the senses leads to dukha, unlimited misery. Therefore, the advice given in the Gita is to tolerate the urges of the senses. It is generated from our desire for sense gratification, nothing else. If I experience some material sense enjoyment, then I say, oh yes, I am peaceful now, I am happy now. The next day, when it is gone, I become unhappy. That is the nature of happiness or distress. It fluctuates according to the mind's desires, nothing else. Therefore, tolerate and do not become affected by it. Who can do this? How can one develop the power of tolerance? How to develop the power of tolerance? Follow Mahaprabhu instruction. Trinath api sunichena tarur eva sahi sunena. Think yourself much lower, more insignificant than a blade of grass lying in the street. There should be no pride, damba, and no arrogance. I am the lowest of the low. Be as tolerant as tree. How tolerant is the tree? A tree tolerates the scorching heat of the how tolerant is the tree? A tree tolerates the scorching heat of the sun, torrential rain, and thunderbolts, all without objection. When a tree is not watered, it tolerates. It may dry up but does not ask for water. The tree also tolerates when it is cut into pieces and burned to ashes. Mahaprabhu instruction is Tarod Eva Sahi Sunena. Be as tolerant as the tree. You cannot do anything. You simply have to tolerate. Do not be affected and do not be disturbed. How can one develop this power of tolerance? Kirtanya Sada Hari Amanina Mani Dena. Do not demand respect for yourself. Rather pay respect to one and all. With this mentality, you chant Hare Krishna and do Hari Bhajan. Then you will develop the power of tolerance. Those who do not engage in Hari Bhajana are not at all tolerant, toiling hard to satisfy the senses. Therefore, it is said in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, such non-devotee engage their senses in very troublesome and extensive work, and they suffer insomnia at night because their intelligence constantly breaks their sleep with various mental speculations. They are frustrated in all their various plans by supernatural power. Even great sages, if they are against your transcendental topics, must rotate in this material world. People run after enjoyment in order to satisfy their senses. They work hard like asses. Their activities are very troublesome. and painful, just to earn money, thinking that they will satisfy their senses. One person may pull a rickshaw in the scorching sun, another may be a high court judge sitting in air conditioned room. Still, they are both toiling hard for the same purpose, to give more and more enjoyment to the material senses. The whole day one is engaged in troublesome and tiring work. When night comes, they are very tired. They come back home to take rest, but they cannot sleep because they have no peace. While sleeping, many bad dreams come. One will think, oh, my work is not done. The person took money and didn't pay it back. My business is failing. So many thoughts haunt their mind. They spend sleepless nights. Then what is this life? Oh, I cannot have any peace. I cannot have sleep. I have no happiness. He makes many plans and projects, but they all fall apart. If it is not sanctioned by Providence, then his plans will not successful. He then becomes disappointed and loses mental strength. Even yogis, munis, rishis, if they were not here Krishna Katha, live on the strength of mental concatenation and will eventually fall down from their very elevated positions and remain in the repeated cycle of birth and death. If they cannot hear nectarian Krishna Katha, if they cannot engage in the loving service to Krishna, then their destination, then that is their destination. Hear and speak Krishna Katha. Who speak Krishna Katha, very few Vaishnavas may be speaking actual Krishna Katha. What Katha is everyone else speaking? They speak only Kapata Katha, topics of duplicity, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, how to develop economically, how to get moksha, or how to fulfill one's material desires. They are speaking on these topics. Who is speaking Krishna Katha? The demigods occupy very elevated positions. But if they do not hear Krishna Katha, and if they cannot engage themselves in Krishna loving service, they fall down from their most elevated positions. When they fall down, what do they become? They become rishis and munis. And when rishis and munis fall down, what do they become? They become kshatriyas, vaishyas, or shudras, gliding down because they do not speak Krishna Katha and do not hear Krishna Katha. They only speak on topics of Janma, Arth, Kam, Moksha. That is the result. No one speaks Krishna Katha. Yasmat Prasanga Vimukha, they are completely forgetful of Krishna, devoid of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, they cannot tolerate. They become psychologically affected, disturbed day and night, and they cannot sleep. They have no power of tolerance. They are devoid of pure knowledge. Now we will study for some time for the Prabhupada Sri Lila Amrita. Hare Krishna. Subhala was still unsatisfied. He complained to Prabhupada that the other devotees wouldn't cooperate with him. He wanted to go into seclusion in Vrindavan for the rest of his life and chant instead of becoming full-time preacher in ISKCON. Srila Prabhupada asked, what do you mean no one will listen to you? You think that means they are defective? No, you are defective. Prabhupada raised his voice. If you are preaching and no one will listen, don't think you should go away in disgust and save yourself by chanting. Not. That is not our line. We must qualify ourselves so they will listen. Do you know the story of Mr. Beckham? Subhala shook his head. No one would buy his residence, Prabhupada continued. So he became anxious. Still he tried, and one day a man approached him in his shop and asked if he had any Beckham powder, and in excitement that someone had asked for him for his medicine, he died. Similarly, better we spread our wisdom. Similarly, we spend our whole life and die just to make one person Krishna conscious. This is our line to become so absorbed in preaching Krishna, what, whether in Vrindavan or anywhere. We must save all the asuras from destroying the world. In stressing active service and practical results, Srila Prabhupada was exactly following the teaching and example of his spiritual master. According to Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, no chant in a secluded place and not preach was a chanting process. Devotion service meant practical work for Krishna. The simple, positive way to control the senses was to engage them fully in the service of Krishna. Active service was the topmost yoga. Prabhupada told Subhala, a fact that he had repeatedly explained in his book. In the recently published second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, he had written, here it is clearly mentioned that the inhabitants of Vrindavana were extensively busy in the hard labor of their day work, and due to hard labor, they were engaged in sound sleep at night. So practically, they had very little time to devote to meditation or to the other paraphernalia of spiritual activities. But factually, they were engaged in the highest spiritual activities only. Everything done by them was spiritualized because everything was dovetailed in the relationship with Lord Sri Krishna. The central point of activities was Krishna, and as such, the so called activities in the material world were saturated with spiritual potency. That is the advantage of the way of Bhakti Yoga. One should discharge one duty on Lord Krishna's behalf, and all one's action will be saturated with Krishna thought, the highest pattern of trance in spiritual realization. As far as possible, Prabhupada engaged each disciple in a certain service according to the particular disciple's psycho-physical nature. But everyone had to take up some kind of work for Krishna. Since Prabhupada desired to build a temple in Vrindavan, then whoever would help him do it, whether they were trained or not, or whether it was a tendency or not, or whoever offered him assistance, would become very dear to him and to Lord Krishna. When householder couple Guru Dasa and Yamuna agreed to remain in Vrindavan to help Prabhupada build the temple, Prabhupada welcomed it and shared with them the intention of his plan. If you can construct a nice temple in Vrindavan for me, in this way I shall be eternally grateful because we are a worldwide movement of Krishna. And if we don't have a nice place at Vrindavan, then what will be that use? Vrindavan is Krishna's land, and in the future, many of our disciples will go there just to see, along with many tourists and other friends. So, therefore, we must have sufficient place for them. I know that you are not trained up for being construction manager. Neither that job must be very tasteful to you. But because you are sincere devotee of Krishna, he is giving you all strength and intelligence how to do it. That is what we want. This is the hermitage in Krishna consciousness. By the time Prabhupada and most of his disciples left Vrindavan at the end of Kartika, relations between his disciple and the residents of Vrindavan had improved. The people of Vrindavan were impressed by the devotees' daily Sankirtana procession to Ramana Reti, and they were impressed by the Prabhupada. Although Prabhupada felt that much time had been wasted, it, it had been a year since Mr. S offered them the land. He was now hopeful. ISKCON projects were developing all over the world, and all were struggling. The devotees' only means of income was from the sale of books and to some degree from their spiritual sky incense business. As yet, Prabhupada had no architecture plan for his Vrindavan project, but he determined to gather from his book fund and from devotees enough money for material and labors. One day he went to the building site and asked a devotee to mix a little cement with his own hand. He laid down the first concrete for the foundation. Hyderabad, November 11, 1972. Prabhupada had come to Hyderabad for the Pandal program. Big crowds attended his lectures, and whoever he went, even while getting into and out of his car, people surrounded him to touch his lotus feet. Although Hyderabad had been suffering from drought, a few days after Prabhupada's arrival, rain came. One newspaper suggested that the Harinam Kirtan Srila Prabhupada and his devotees performed so enthusiastically must have ended the drought. Prabhupada agreed. Srila Prabhupada met with Mr. N, who was visiting Hyderabad from Bombay. Shyam Sundara still had a cordial relationship with Mr. N. Because Mr. N had been fond of his 3-year-old daughter, Saraswati, so he went to Mr. N and convinced him to speak to Prabhupada. Mr. N agreed, but being suspicious that Prabhupada might try to use mystic power to persuade him to do something against his will. He brought a guru with him, thinking the guru would counteract Prabhupada's spiritual power. Mr. N, his guru, and Shyamsundara all came to the home of Paninal Prithi, where Prabhupada was staying. Prabhupada met informally with his guests, conversing with them over prasadam until he yawned, and Mr. N. Guru said, "Oh Swami, you must be very tired. We should not disturb you now. You should rest and we may talk later." "Oh yes," Prabhupada replied, "I am very tired." So Mr. N and his guru excused themselves and retired to the adjoining room. After a few minutes, Prabhupada called Tamal Krishna Goswami into his room. When someone asks you if you are tired, Prabhupada said, It means he is tired. If you go into the other room and you will see they were sleeping. He instructed Tamal Krishna to carefully awaken Mr. N without disturbing his guru and bring him in. Tiptoeing into the room, Tamal Krishna found both Mr. N and his guru asleep on the bed. He went over to Mr. N, touched his arm, and said quietly, Mr. N, wake up. Prabhupada would like to speak with you. Come quickly. Mr. N, being roused from his slumber, obediently walked into Prabhupada's room, forgetting his guru friend. For 2 hours, Prabhupada talked with Mr. N, and by the end of discussion, they had worked out a new sales agreement. Tamal Krishna and Syam Sundara, working in a separate room, drafted and typed the documents, while Prabhupada and Mr. N settled the final legal point. Then Mr. N signed the agreements, while his guru friend continued sleeping soundly. Later that day, Tamal Krishna confided to Srila Prabhupada, I am so disturbed by these feelings that I can't chant my rounds properly. That is natural, Prabhupada replied. Sometimes when I'm disturbed, I also, but I can see that I'm making spiritual advancement. Even so, Tamal Krishna admitted. Prabhupada nodded. I used to think how to avoid difficult situations, Tamal Krishna said, but now I think I should run away from them. Yes, said Prabhupada, we should welcome these. They give us an opportunity to advance more. Shyam Sundar and Tamal Krishna Goswami flew back to Bombay with Mr. N that afternoon. According to the new terms, ISKCON would pay Mr. N the 5 lakh of rupees for the government tax, and in return Mr. N would execute the deed. But was also a new timeline, 3 weeks, and the devotees would have to work fast. Prabhupada himself would soon come to Bombay to settle the matter once and for all. Bombay, November 25, 1972. Although Prabhupada had come to Bombay with hopes of finishing the land transaction, Mr. N was still delaying despite the new agreement. Obviously, his stalling was simply part of his plan to cheat ISKCON. Srila Prabhupada waited many days in Bombay, finally departing for a Pandal program in Ahmedabad. He left behind instructions for his disciples to get the deed on the new term or else to take back the original 2 lakh of rupees paid as the down payment. While Srila Prabhupada was away, however, Shyam Sundar Tamal Krishna Goswami and others began talking about how even if they would one day get the deed to the Juhu property to develop the Hare Krishna land the way Prabhupada had envisioned would be practically impossible. Shyam Sundara argued that even if they got the land, how could they really expect to build a big temple and hotel here in the jungle? It just wouldn't work. Meanwhile, from Ahmedabad, Prabhupada continued to wage his Bombay campaign and he requested Mr. N and Mr. D to come to Allahabad to try to make a settlement. They declined. In Bombay, the devotees learned that if they wanted to get back their down payment as well as the money they had deposited towards the 5 lakh gains tax, then they would have to cancel the new agreement. They were confused and their time was running one. out. One morning, one of the Prabhupada disciples, Vishakha Devi Dasi, arrived in Ahmedabad from Bombay. Prabhupada called her and told her to return to Bombay immediately with a message. Out of concern that his leaders in Bombay not making a wrong decision and decide to relinquish the land, he told her to tell them that they should not, under any circumstances, cancel the agreement with Mr. N. Actually, he said, this is not a woman's job, but everyone else here is either engaged in the pandal or has not been with us long enough to do this task. Vishaka took the next train out of Ahmedabad and arrived in Bombay the following morning, but when Prabhupada had foreseen had already happened. The devotees had cancelled the sales agreement. They were convinced that to get the land would be a mistake, and their lawyers had agreed, pointing out that if the devotees wanting to retrieve their money, they should cancel the agreement immediately. When the devotees heard Prabhupada's message from Ahmedabad, confusion reignited. They had no legal standing, no claim to the land, and they had failed to carry out Prabhupada's desire. Giriraj phoned Prabhupada in Ahmedabad to tell him what happened. Bhakti Vedanta Swami here, Prabhupada said as he took the telephone. Giriraj was saying that a devotee had come from Ahmedabad with a message. Yes, yes, Prabhupada said. What is the point? Finally, Giriraj blurted out that they had cancelled the sales agreement. Prabhupada was silent. Then, in a voice that expressed both anger and resignation, he said, then everything is finished. I shall be the last man to give up the Hare Krishna land to the rogue Mr. N. Prabhupada wrote to a life member just before leaving Ahmedabad for Bombay. Prabhupada was now immediately planning how to rectify his disciples' mistake. No money had been transferred, so perhaps it was not too late. Mr. N could not possibly understand why Prabhupada was so determined in his fight to keep Juhu land. Not that Prabhupada had kept his motives hidden, but only a devotee can understand the mind or action of another devotee. Mr. N was dealing with Prabhupada just as he had dealt with C Company. He had cheated them, now he would cheat ISKCON. He could only summarize that Prabhupada and his disciples were driven by the same motive as he himself. The only motive he understands, material possessiveness. Thank you, dear devotees. I think it's 6:50 now. Uh, if you want, you can continue chanting Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpatrubhyascha kripa sindhubhevcha patitanam pavnebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Hare Krishna.
Hare